This Choircast podcast is brought to you by Heretic 2 by Matthew J. DiStefano. Ready to challenge everything you thought you knew about faith? In Heretic 2, I dive into LGBTQ affirmation, rejecting divine violence, and embracing universalism in a bold post-Christian perspective. If you're done with outdated dogma and want a justice-oriented, inclusive view of spirituality, then this book is for you. Get Heretic 2 wherever books are sold, and start rethinking faith today.
Before we get into the podcast, I wanted to give you an invitation to something that I'm doing. It is a 1.5 hour class that is about helping you navigate relationships with religious people that believe that queer people are going to hell. Those conversations I know can be incredibly difficult, and I've actually helped thousands of people walk through those conversations. And I want to help you do the same. So I've got this class that is happening this Thursday, August the 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And we're going to spend an hour on content, and we're going to talk about some of the things that therapists use to have these conversations with people and to help people grow beyond where they currently are. As well as I'm going to talk about the Bible and some of my insights as well, in a way that's going to help you have those conversations and hopefully maintain a healthy relationship with those people if that's something that you want. So the deal is, we are doing this for free, but we would really appreciate it if you help us fund this work. You can find a link to that course. It's on Eventbrite. But you can go to nooma community.com/links. That's NOOMA community.com/links. And you can click right there and get a ticket for this really helpful course. I can't wait to see you there. And at that same place, you're going to find ways that you can book time to have a one-on-one meeting with me and be part of our Not Church community and all the other things. Welcome to the Unbelief Podcast, your journey, actually our journey together beyond inherited beliefs to a spirituality that works for you. I'm your host, Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. We can fix that later, right? No? Damn. So you've made it to another book club episode of the Unbelief Podcast. We are taking our time to really enjoy one of the most beautiful works of spirituality and of the empowerment of women in the ancient world. It's called the Book of Ruth. It is a book about all different kinds of love and faithfulness, and of these two incredibly strong women named Ruth and Naomi. So just to catch us all up, for those who didn't do the reading ahead of class, we are in this story where Ruth and Naomi have lost everything, all of the men in their lives. Ruth was married to Naomi's son and has eventually moved back to the place where Naomi grew up and got married and had her children. And that's where they are. Ruth is a foreigner who has immigrated in a time, the time that this was written was a time where immigrants were particularly reviled. And if you had married an immigrant, the people were saying, no, you need to divorce the immigrants. We need to stay pure. And Ruth ended up going to a field to basically use the social services of the time and gather the leftovers after the people had reaped barley. This is a time in the year where they are doing a barley harvest, and has met the landowner, Boaz, that we now know is a relative of hers, but she doesn't. And he's been incredibly kind to her, giving her sort of extra privileges, protecting her, doing all of that stuff. So here we are. We're in chapter 2 at verse 14. It says, "At mealtime, Boaz said to her, 'Come here and eat some of this bread and dip your morsel in the sour wine.'" So she sat beside the reapers, and he heaped up for her some parched grain, or another word for that is roasted grain. Now, what we need to be clear about is culturally, this is unheard of, right? What Boaz is doing is he is inviting her to reap or to eat the meal that is prepared for his workers that he has paid for, and eat as if she is one of them. Meals in this culture are very important. They are ways that community gathers. They are ways that that people express connection and care, and this is what's happening here. Now, this would be over the top for an immigrant, right? In this time, like we said, there's all kinds of nuances here in the story, but Boaz is welcoming her to his table, and that, I don't know. We live in a time where in a lot of places and in a lot of groups, it's not completely dissimilar, right? It's not completely, we don't live in a place that, a time that everybody is just loving all the immigrants. And Boaz is now taking this to another level. And it I think challenges us to think in our own lives, in our own world. It may not be the immigrant. It may be. But who is it that society is targeting, is othering, is pushing to the edges, to the periphery? Right? I'm not sure who that is in your world, in your culture. But this scripture is implying that if we're going to follow Boaz's example, we need to not be pushing those people out of the community, right? Boaz doing this, it's not just him caring for her, which it is, and it's really over the top caring. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But it's also publicly pushing back against all of this discrimination, publicly taking an action that other people will notice, and including this immigrant as someone who deserves value, right? As someone who deserves to be treated as human. We don't always think of meals in the same way today, but there are ways that we can do this, right? There are likely people in your world who have been pushed to the edges that don't get invited to go to the movies, go have a drink after work. People that others don't even know their name. And if we can publicly humanize them, if we can publicly include them, it not only is the right thing, it's not only what God wants us to do, but it exposes the hypocrisy, it exposes the injustice, it exposes how wrong the pushing out of these people is, right? It exposes all of those things when we do this in a public way. And I think that that's something we need to really, really let sink deep down in us. Maybe make us feel a little bad for not doing it. But if nothing else, call us to echo that in our lives. Whether it's sitting down next to the homeless person who was asking for money and learning their name and hearing their story and telling them our story. Because, when you're in a community, when you're on the inside, it's not just listening, right? It's sharing. Like, what if that's the thing you did the next time when you were passing by a homeless person? Yeah. Yeah, I think you'd be acting like Boaz. So Boaz goes over the top with her. And it says that she sat beside the reapers and heaped up for her. He heaped up for her some parched grain. And then it says she ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. So we have her eating so much that she gets to have a to-go plate, right? Like when you were in college at your grandmother's house and she said, no, you're hungry. Here, pack up some more to go. She is being cared for at this intense level. And we know part of the reason why, right? Boaz is part of her family. But here's the thing. If you've ever lived in a small town, in a small community, you know that word gets around. This is a small community. And remember, Naomi used to live here, right? And so she was married to a man from this community. She had children in this community. People know who Naomi is. They know the scandal of when she left. And now they know also the scandal of returning because she left and their sons did the thing that at this moment at the time in which this story is being written, in this moment, it is scandalous. Her sons married foreign wives. And one of the foreign wives came back with her. Yeah. Yeah, that's not something that would be kept secret. That would have been spread all over the town. Everybody, oh my gosh, Naomi is back. Oh my gosh, did you hear who is with her? Yeah. The whole town knows about it. But Ruth, she's the foreign wife that came back with the widow / mother who lost her sons. And so she doesn't know this. And it seems clear in the story that Naomi hasn't shared any of that stuff with her. So like she's not aware that Boaz is a relative and that he is really going over the top, not only because he's a good guy and he's doing the right thing, but also because she is a relative and he is not going to be part of that systemic injustice that's going to act like she's not a relative because she's a foreigner, because the husband should have divorced her. No. Boaz isn't having any of that. No, he's publicly pushing back against that. And then he takes it to an even greater level. So she's there for the whole meal. She has the to-go box. And then she gets up to start working again, start gleaning again. And Boaz tells the men, so remember there's young men and young women here. Boaz tells the men, let her glean among the standing sheaves. So among the stuff that you are harvesting, like let her go with you. And then, oh my gosh, he says, you must also pull out some handfuls for her from the bundles and leave them for her to glean. Do not rebuke her. Oh my gosh. He he basically puts her into the place where she's able to glean like a full-on person that's gleaning for him, that's collecting his profits. It's almost like he's saying to them, hey, give her some of my money. Yeah. He takes now not just the leftovers to give to her. Now, just as she did when she sat down to eat, now she is getting some of what would be his directly. It's taking money out of his pocket and putting it into her in the modern sense of all of this. Man, this story keeps getting better and better and more scandalous in that town. Because Boaz is caring for this immigrant, this person that in another part of the Bible shouldn't be allowed into the assembly to the 10th generation. That person, that person from that culture that is reviled to that extent. Yeah, Boaz is ignoring all of that, taking money out of his pocket to give to her. It makes me think of, in our modern culture, the pressure that there is in a lot of the culture to not give money to homeless people. Right? Because people will say, oh, well, they're going to buy drugs with it. Oh, well, they're going to buy alcohol with it. And so you shouldn't give it to them. You shouldn't help them out. First off, it's just underscoring how much discrimination there is against homeless people, right? Their lives are as hard as lives can be in the modern world. And now, on top of that, people are going to put them in a category of, in the biblical category of like unclean, right? You can't be around them. You can't talk to them. And I don't know. When I talk to people about this, the thing that I realize is like, if I was being homeless is a really hard life. Living on the street, I can try to imagine, but I feel like I still can't fully get there, even in my imagination. I've not ever been in that very, very difficult place, a place that difficult, right? But when I imagine it, I imagine what I would want and what would feel like it was making it bearable would be to be able to get drunk and pass out, or get high and experience some sort of positive emotions when the rest of my life is not. I'm pretty sure I would do the same thing. And that allowing me to numb some of the pain, even though it's not healthy, even though you wouldn't want your child to be doing that in their bedroom, for a homeless person, maybe that's grace. Maybe that's love, actually. Like, even if you knew that's what they were going to do with it, maybe it's a kindness. But if you can't get there, helping them out, giving them some money humanizes them. And whether or not they use it for the thing you would want them to use it for, it does allow them to do something. Hopefully get some food. Maybe if you give them a couple $100, they'll get a hotel with it. Or I don't know, book a hotel for them. But yeah, Boaz is taking social risks to push back against the dehumanization of Ruth, and by extension, immigrants and Moabites and all of that. And then in verse 17, it says, she gleaned in the field until evening. And so it's been well established so far, she's a hard worker. And so she goes, it says she beat out what she's gleaned, right? You've got to get the barley off of the stalks. And it was about 1 ephah of barley. 1 ephah of barley is about 5 gallons of barley. It is at least 10 days worth of food that she gleaned in that one day. She's a hard worker, right? She isn't just sitting back and doing nothing. She is going and using her time and her energy to make it happen for her and Naomi. So she gets up, she comes into town to Naomi, and Naomi is like amazed and at how much, right? Oh my gosh, how did you even, wow, this is an enormous amount. This is wonderful. And then she takes out her to-go box and gave her what was left after she had eaten. And in verse 19, her mother-in-law says to her, "Where did you glean today? Where have you worked? Blessed is the man who took notice of you." So Ruth tells her it's Boaz. That's where she's been gleaning. And the mother-in-law, Naomi, says, "Blessed be he by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." This is a pattern. Naomi's having a hard time with God. Naomi thinks that God is judging her, ruining her life. But she doesn't lose belief in God, or maybe even faith in God, depending on how you use the word faith. She keeps blessing people in the name of God for doing the right thing. And I think this is an interesting way of looking at this, right? It's this idea that even if you're not sure about God, even if you don't feel like God is helping you out, you can still engage with spirituality. You can still bless other people in the name of their God. You can respect their experience, their life, even if yours isn't that way. Yeah. Like I wonder what would happen if we would become less inwardly focused about faith, less individualistic, and more focused on the communal experience, so that we could, even if we were not really in a great place as far as religion and spirituality is concerned, we could still participate, we could still bless other people, we could still honor their experiences, honor them in the name of their path of spirituality. I mean, Naomi is this deeply evolved human. Yeah. So she blesses Boaz, and then the story turns in another direction, right? We have known this whole time that Boaz is a relative of Naomi, and thereby Ruth, because Ruth is the daughter-in-law of Naomi, but Ruth hasn't known. And we get now not only this moment where Ruth is going to find out, but also we're going to find out something else. Naomi says to her, this is in verse 20, Naomi says to her, "The man is a relative of ours, one of our nearest kin." And another way that nearest kin is a good translation to help people understand in this world, but it's actually a more sort of word for word translation is one with the right to redeem. Now, this is really important because in that culture, there was this role that was played that we mentioned a couple of episodes ago that was played, that was filled by your nearest male sort of leader of the family. And that role is generally called the Kinsman Redeemer. They are the ones who are supposed to pick up the pieces when everything falls apart. And in fact, the society was structured this way to help allow that person to do that job, because what they received a double portion of the inheritance. So if there were 4 male heirs, right, normally it would be divided into quarters, but instead it would be the oldest male heir would get a double portion, and then the rest would be divided equally among the other male heirs, because that person was supposed to, again, when everything falls apart, when somebody sells the family heirloom or loses the family house or whatever, that person was supposed to go and redeem that, to get it back to where it once was, or to get them back from slavery. Or we have this moment in the book of Genesis where Lot is captured and Abraham acts as the kinsman redeemer. He chases after and actually goes with like his army to go and get Lot back. That's this role. And so in this moment, you get a sense of the glimmer of hope that Naomi is finding in this moment, because it wasn't just anybody's field. It was the field of Boaz. And Naomi realizes that Boaz is one of the people who could be their kinsman redeemer. Boaz has made contact, or in fact, I think how Naomi would put it is God put Ruth into Boaz's field, and now Boaz knows of their condition firsthand. I am sure he had heard of it, right? But Boaz now sees Ruth, is having some sort of interactions with Ruth, and we see by his actions that he is working to remedy the situation. We're going to find out later that he's not the first in line to do this, but it doesn't matter. He is one of the people in their life that is supposed to look out for them, and he is doing just that. Have you ever had that moment when things are really bad and you realize that you get a sense that things might be turning around, like something might be picking up for you? Yeah, that's this moment. That's why Naomi has the reaction that she does. That's why she says the things that she does, because she can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And when you are in the dark place, as dark as they are in, any glimmer of light is something you hold on to. Any glimmer of light is this giant thing when you're in the midst of this level of darkness. And then it says in verse 21, then Ruth the Moabite, here we keep being reminded of her foreigner immigrant status. Ruth the Moabite said, he even said to me, stay close by my young men until they have finished all my harvest. And then Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is better, my daughter, that you go out with his young women. Otherwise, someone might bother you in another field. This is important because we get a glimpse of the fact that this still isn't safe. Right? Ruth is still going to have to go out. She's still going to have to gather grain. She's still going to have to do all of this stuff. And yes, Boaz's men are not going to mess with her. But just because Boaz's men aren't going to mess with her doesn't mean that somebody else's men won't. Right? And we get this sense of like, oh, wow, she is still in danger. right? Every time she goes out, every time she tries to get food for her family, every single time, she is in danger. And she still goes out. Because the very next verse says, so she stayed close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvest. And she lived with her mother-in-law. She did this for weeks and weeks. Every day, putting herself in harm's way to provide for her family, to provide for Naomi, a woman who is sort of at the end of her life. She's very old in terms of the life expectancy of women in that era. So Ruth continues to sacrifice, continues to take risks. Yeah. And this is, I think, something for us to consider, right? Sometimes maybe you see some injustice, you see something going on, and you say, okay, I'm going to do something. You take a risk. You do something publicly, right? There's a pattern in human behavior where you do one thing, and after you do one thing, you feel like that whole problem has been solved, right? There's a really interesting study that talks about the number of one and only women, like presidential type figures, whatever that head figure is in a country, right? A country will elect a woman and then never elect another one, because there's this sense that, oh yeah, there was this glass ceiling, it is broken. And now, instead of continuing forward in that, people just go back into whatever their default was. But Ruth doesn't do that. Ruth continues to take the risk. Ruth doesn't just try to find somebody else now that she has gotten some food for Naomi. No, every single day she takes the risk. Every single day she goes out as a young immigrant, single woman in a culture that is very anti-immigrant. And she keeps gleaning. She keeps taking the risk. And when we see something that needs to be done, we can't just do the thing once and feel like we've fulfilled our obligation. No, you have to keep going. You have to keep pressing. You have to keep taking the risk until it is resolved, until there is a new pattern of being, a new pattern of action, of values, of whatever it is that you're fighting against. You keep pushing until there is a new pattern, not until you feel better. Yeah, Ruth's strength, her persistence, her commitment is a message to us. Yeah. It's a message to us wherever we are. And what I think is beautiful is that Ruth has Naomi, and now she has these women of Boaz that work for Boaz, and in some ways Boaz. She has all of these, she has this community. And community is really important. When you're trying to push back, when you're trying to take risks, when you're trying to do this good work, you need people surrounding you, supporting you. I know a lot of you are sort of deconstructing and trying to figure out what you believe about God and all of that in the Bible. And you need a community. Let me tell you, doing that by yourself is hard. And it's also hard to find community where you are when you're doing that work. That's why we have this thing called Not Church. Not Church is a community of people who are trying to find spiritual beliefs and practices that work for them, beliefs that help them become the best version of themselves, beliefs and practices that help them find a purpose greater than themselves, and beliefs and practices that help them experience transcendence. It's like church, is what somebody said. There's this community of people who are talking about purity culture, religious history, memes, politics, all of that stuff like you did in church, except nobody's telling you you're going to hell because you've got tarot cards on the side of your table. Yeah, I think you would love this. I think you should check it out. Now, the people that are involved in this community, a lot of us have religious trauma around being manipulated out of money by pastors, so we don't ask for donations. Everything we do is just pay for what you get. And this is just like that. It's $3 a month. Will help you be part of the Not Church community. And look, we're not trying to participate in the capitalist systemic injustice where people with expendable income are preferenced over people who don't, right? We listen, if you need it for free, if $3 is too much, just let us know. But you go to patreon.com/skepticpastor, patreon.com/skepticpastor, $3 a month. You should try it out. If it doesn't work for you, just stop paying. It's fine. And wherever you're listening to this podcast, give us a ratings, give us a stars. If this was interesting to you, share it with a friend. That really does help. That's it. That's the podcast. Shout out to the Choir Network, to Patheos, to Matthew and Keith, who make everything happen. Now, get out of here. Go do something to make the world a better place. Okay? We'll see you next time.